People don't understand these principles, and that's why so many agile adoptions fail. Hello everyone, and welcome to Chatting Transformation, the Change and Transformation podcast designed to make your transformation journey that little bit easier. I'm Barry, and I've been in change and transformation activities for around about 20 years now, and the point of me making this podcast is to pass on my experience, my learnings, my opinions, and any lessons I have from my career so that you can, well, hopefully it will make your journey that little bit easier. And if by doing this podcast I'm able to help just one person with their change and transformation journey, then it'll be successful. And at the moment we're in our Agile week and talking about all things Agile. Now in the previous episode, which was I'll start at the beginning. In episode 8, we covered an introduction to Agile, and the key takeaway was that Agile is about creating a mindset. It's a mindset for teams to think about why and how they work in a certain way, and then be open to continuous improvement on the way that work is done. Now, in episode 9, we introduced the Agile Manifesto, which is a document that was born right at the start of Agile, and it contains 4 Agile values and 12 Agile principles. And in that episode, we talked through the Agile values. And then in the previous episode, in episode 10, we covered the first of the 6 Agile principles, and you can see how they start to bridge the gap between the high-level values and the reality of daily delivery. And in this episode, we're going to walk through the second lot, this principles 7 through 12. One thing we noticed when we were talking through the previous set of 6 is that they overlap and there's common threads across all of them, and you can start to see how they come together to give you a really strong framework to help you embed your Agile mindset. And these next 6 are absolutely no different, and there'll be things in here that relate to the first 6, there'll be things in here where one principle relates to another principle in this session, but bear with me as we go through it. Now, just a reminder that Agile was born in the world of software development, so some of the language in the values and principles in particular is very specific to software development. All I say is you need to be able to just take a step back, think about the principle within the principle, and think about how it can be applied in your organisation, because as I've said previously, Agile can be applied to multiple different organisations doing multiple different things, and there's some real benefits of adopting an Agile mindset. So let's get straight into it, and I'll put the principles up on the screen as we work through. So, Principle 7. Working software is a primary measure of progress. So this principle serves as a reminder that the ultimate measure for success is a working product that the customer or end user loves. It's about focusing on getting the product into their hands rather than going for perfection or creating reams of documentation, which is what we tend to do in waterfall. And it's not that we've reached a certain milestone, so we've got to the end. It is that the user or the customer has got the working product working for them and they're happy with it. So that's principle 7. You're not done until you're done. Principle 8. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So if we think back to when we talked about the previous principles, big part of adopting Agile is about creating and producing high-performing teams. And we need to protect that team, and keeping up with demand on a rapid release schedule can be really taxing on the team. So we need to set clear and realistic expectations with all of these stakeholders, sponsors, developers, team members, end users, customers. If we keep morale high and we improve work-life balance, that protects that high-performing team from burnout, and then you don't have to deal with the threat of turnover, which can then undermine your high-performing team. If you start to swap people out, you get a different team. We previously talked about having the right mix of people with the right skill sets, how that's important. So it's an interesting one here, because many of the other principles are very focused on let's do more, let's do better, let's do this, let's do that. This one is saying effectively just be careful and manage everybody's expectations. Set clear and realistic expectations. It is a really important principle. Principle 9. Continuous attention to a technical excellence and good design enhances agility. Now, while Agile encourages shorter cycles and more frequent releases, there's also a need to ensure that we don't build things to a substandard specification that will cause problems for us in the future. So you need to be cognizant that if we're doing release after release after release, that future releases will be built on the foundations of previous releases. So make sure those foundations are sound. If you're in a technical space, you'll hear things like technical debt and going back to do rework and all of those kinds of things, but the best way to avoid that is not to get into that situation in the first place by keeping an eye on technical excellence and good design. Remember, working software into the hands of the client is the ultimate measure of success, and if you're giving them stuff that's substandard, you're not actually being successful. Principle 10. Simplicity, the art of maximising the amount of work not done, is essential. You've got to really think about this principle. So this is about saying that prioritising, it's really important to prioritise work that has the most impact. To do that, you have to have effectively a laser sharp focus on the objective and a real cutthroat prioritisation decision making process or structure, or whatever you want to call it. And many of the methodologies that we'll talk about in future episodes are very clear on how this is done and put in place very strong structures to support this. But you need to discourage building for the sake of building, and you also need to avoid perfectionism. And if you think about the 80-20 rule, spending 20% of your time getting 80% of the delivery done is better than then spending 80% of your time trying to get the remaining 20% of the deliverable done. So yes, thinking back to the last one, you do need technical excellence, but that isn't the same as perfectionism. Principle 11. The best architectures, requirements and designs emerge from self-organising teams. And this principle aligns to the value of teams and interactions over processes and tools. And we've also talked about creating high-performing teams, getting the right people together with the right skill sets, and protecting those teams. And here, what we're talking about is we've got that high-performing team, we've delegated to them the autonomy and trust to deliver in the way they want to deliver, which is because they're the experts on delivery. And what this is saying is that rather than then having hierarchies where uninformed managers make decisions for that team, I say uninformed, but less informed managers make decisions, it's about trusting that flat structured team to make those decisions. And it's kind of a better decision because it's made in consensus rather than individual, and it's made in a consensus where all the information is available. So it's about saying that actually respect the fact that the team has a lot of the information. It has a model where it's not just one person, it's multiple people sharing views and opinions and then coming to an informed consensus around the decision. That's principle 11. Principle 12. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behaviour accordingly. So many of the principles up to now have talked about focusing on the actual work, the product or output being done, or on building the right team. This is about saying that it's not just, within the Agile mindset, it's not just the product being delivered that needs regular review and assessment and feedback. It's also the team themselves and how they work that needs regular review and feedback. And it says that teams can experiment with different styles, processes and ways of working, and there should be regular reviews in place to look at the results of those experiments, those different ways of working, whether they worked, whether they didn't, should they be adopted for the next round. So it's not just the product, but it's how the team has performed and how that performance can then be improved. So again, when we talk about some of the methodologies, particularly in things like Scrum, there's very specific ceremonies in there that focus one on the product review and then one on the team review and how the team is performing. We'll talk more about that when we get into those methodologies. But that's 12. It's about saying basically it's not just the product that needs to be regularly reviewed and improved, it's also the team, and that needs to be something that's done almost as common as a product is released and reviewed. So that's principles 7 through 12, and I'm hoping now, having seen along with principles 1 through 6, it starts to translate the agile values into something which is much more applicable. Hopefully it helps to you and your team to start to visualize how you can adopt and embed an agile mindset. In the next episode, I'm going to cover the most common agile methodologies that take you to the next level, which is almost the practical applications. We've done the high level values, we've now done the principles which kind of sit underneath it and bring you a bit more reality and a bit more visualization, and then we'll get into the methodologies, which is a practical application of how you implement the agile mindset. But for now, that's all I've got. I want to thank you very much for listening. If you are on YouTube, remember to like this video and please hit the subscribe button. That's everything. Thank you very much for listening.